For us, we'll start down the back. Yeah.
Prime Minister, does there need to be an independent investigation into government contracts with visions of a helping hand?
Yeah. So, look, I understand that the Minister was part of the interview for the Sunday program and did give an extensive hour-long interview for that program. And I do believe we'll also be giving you some follow-up response directly to some of the details of that journalistic piece. Sorry, I'll just then come to, just because of the level of detail around the different allegations there, the Minister will be able to respond to some of those in a bit more detail. Overall, look, our focus continues to have to be, of course, housing people, but doing that safely. I'm aware that the Minister had some time ago concerns and some allegations raised around some of the nature of the emergency housing being provided in Rotorua. She immediately, as I understand, followed up with appropriate agencies to gain assurances from the likes of police that clients were being kept safe. I also understand that they are working with, and have been for some time now, working with HUD to make sure that when complaints are raised, that there is an appropriate process there again, so we can make sure that people are being kept safe.
In your view, yes or no, does there need to be an independent investigation?
Well, as I've just said, you have now a QC that's been brought in to look at the complaints process, to make sure that if someone does raise a concern, that that's being appropriately followed up on. Also, I believe these issues were referred to the police, and that is what you would expect.
What is the threshold for triggering something like that?
An independent investigation?
Well, pretty serious.
I can't answer that, Thomas, at this point. So yes, you're right. Some serious allegations have been raised, and when they were raised, they were referred to the police. But I can't comment beyond that. I just don't have the detail about then what subsequently happened with the police. But as I understand, that is where you would expect those issues to be followed through, and that is what I understand happened.
There are clients in emergency housing across the country in vulnerable situations. The complaints process has, been found to be lacking, and it's still relatively recent. I mean, this is not a new problem. There have been several flags and reports, including from police, about the safety of people. What is the government outside of Rotorua doing to actually ensure the safety of these people?
Yeah, well, we do want to make sure that when people raise complaints, that they are being looked at appropriately. People should be safe in their housing, particularly when it's provided by the government. And so, if I may answer your question, and so as I've said, HUD has brought in a QC to take a look at that process and check that it is operating as we would have an expectation that it should, and as the public would. I can't comment beyond that at the moment because I don't have the details of what they may have found to date.
What about looking at the basic situation of these contracts being, well, there are no contracts, this money being handed out to hoteliers and moteliers?
Well, no, there are contracts as well. So it depends whether you're talking about emergency housing special needs grants, where you're right, someone will individually go and then find their accommodation, versus a contracted motel.
Where a huge amount of money is going through the special needs grants, and there's no contractual obligations on these hoteliers to provide a safe place, and it's been going on for years.
And that's exactly
something that the government is addressing, that the people are there in the first place in the environment.
Jane, if I may, that's exactly what the initiative in Rotorua was designed to address. That where we had a situation where people were coming through the system needing immediate accommodation. The Emergency Housing Special Needs Grant is just that, a grant to enable someone to find housing, to accommodate themselves, and it's designed for short-term stays. What we're seeing, of course, is that there were longer-term stays and that it was resulting in often unsafe environments, particularly for people with children. That's where, of course, work was done to try and then make sure that we had accommodation where there was greater control over placement and therefore greater control over safety. And here we have examples where even where security was being provided, there's been concern that that wasn't appropriate. Look, when that's being raised, we have to act on it. And that has been referred to the police. I can't then comment on detail beyond that because, sorry, I just don't have that.
My point is that it's more fundamental about a complaint system. It's actually about everything in the lead up to that, about the situation that people are in, and what is the government doing to actually address what was a very well-intentioned, and no one's arguing that, but what is being done
I've just
to address
explained that.
The circumstances outside of Rotorua, because nothing's been done in other parts of the country.
Well, I disagree with that, first of all. Second of all, we saw a particular issue in Rotorua. I mean, let's I think it's important here to keep in mind some of the context we have, and Rotorua is a really good example. Since 2013, the population there grew by 9,000 people. In that time, we had 1,500 homes consented. And over that period of time, we had 44 fewer public houses until 2017 when we came into office. So right there, you can see there was an immediate gap in meeting the accommodation needs of the people of Rotorua. So enter into the last 5 years, we've seen increasing demand for emergency housing. Now, we've worked very hard to build the houses they need. We've had 200 built, another 300 under construction, and we have the Infrastructure Enabling Fund, which is not just public housing, but more generally housing in general, which will deliver thousands of homes. The question is, what do you do in the meantime? Now, you're right, the Emergency Housing Special Needs Grant, which the National Party brought in, was designed for small scale and short term. We know it's been neither while we tackle this housing crisis. So in Rotorua, what we attempted to do then was actually designate particular areas and say these are the areas where people in emergencies will go into, so that we can make sure that only we can appropriately place people, particularly if they have kids. We can put in wraparound services, we can put in security. Now, we haven't wanted to just carte blanche roll that out across the country without knowing that it has worked. And we do know there are some things we learnt from Rotorua that won't apply everywhere, because as I've just said, Rotorua has had some particular challenges. We haven't always got it right, but we have not allowed a situation where people, for instance, continue to exist in their cars while we build proper housing for them.
Do you not believe these alleged victims who are speaking
Sorry?
out? Do you not believe these?
I don't think there's anything I've said that would lend itself to that assumption. As I've said, I'm told that as soon as the Minister had these concerns raised with her, they were referred to the police, which is appropriate given the nature of the issues. Secondly, a QC is being brought in to look at the complaints process to make sure that when such issues are being raised, that they are being dealt with appropriately. I think that demonstrates that the issues have been taken very seriously.
These people are highly vulnerable. They live
are,
in
and often
their
very
cars. They don't have access to computers and phones and ways to make formal complaints.
And again, I'm not suggesting here that this is just about that. We've got to make sure that no matter in what form a complaint is raised, that it's being dealt with appropriately. And you're right, often we are dealing with people who are coming from extremely complex situations, very difficult situations. And we do have a responsibility to make sure they're being kept safe. And that is why, for instance, the police were involved.